Blusterowski, Collicord, and other editorial prophets of the Continental Democratic Movement have in their leading articles shown themselves disposed to vilipend the late Manchester insurrection, as evincing in the rioters an extreme backwardness to battle, nay, as betokening, in the English people itself, perhaps a want of the proper animal courage indispensable in these ages. 1,000,000 hungry operative men started up, in utmost paroxysm of desperate protest against their lot. And, as Collicord and company, how many shots were fired? Very few in comparison. Certain hundreds of drilled soldiers sufficed to suppress this million-headed hydras and tread it down, without the smallest appeasement or hope of such, into its subterranean settlements again, there to reconsider itself. Compared with our revolts in Lyons, in Warsaw and elsewhere, to say nothing of incomparable Paris city past or present, what a lamblike insurrection! The present editor is not here, with his readers, to vindicate the character of insurrections, nor does it matter to us whether Blusterowski and the rest may think the English a courageous people or not courageous. In passing, however, let us mention that, to our view, this was not an unsuccessful insurrection, that as insurrections go, we have not heard lately of any that succeeded so well. 1,000,000 of hungry operative men, as Blusterowski says, rose all up, came all out into the streets, and stood there. What other could they do? Their wrongs and griefs were bitter, insupportable. Their rage against the same was just. But who are they that cause these wrongs? Who that will honestly make effort to redress them? Our enemies are we know not who or what. Our friends are we know not where. How shall we attack anyone, shoot or be shot by anyone? Oh, if the accursed invisible nightmare that is crushing out the life of us and ours would take a shape, approach us like a Hyrcanian tiger, the behemoth of chaos, the arch-fiend himself, in any shape that we could see and fasten on. A man can have himself shot with cheerfulness, but it needs first that he sees clearly for what. Show him the divine face of justice, then the diabolical monster which is eclipsing that. He will fly at the throat of such a monster, never so monstrous, and need no bidding to do it. Woolwich grapeshot will sweep clear all streets, blast into invisibility so many thousand men. But if your Woolwich grapeshot be but eclipsing divine justice, and the god's radiance itself gleam recognizable athwart such grapeshot, then, yes, then is the time come for fighting and attacking. All artillery parks have become weak, and are about to dissipate. In the god's thunder, their poor thunder slackens, ceases, finding that it is, in all senses of the term, a brute one. That the Manchester insurrection stood still, on the streets, with an indisposition to fire and bloodshed, was wisdom for it even as an insurrection. Insurrection, never so necessary, is a most sad necessity, and governors who wait for that to instruct them are surely getting into the fatalist courses, proving themselves sons of Nox and Chaos, of blind cowardice, not of seeing valour. How can there be any remedy in insurrection? It is a mere announcement of the disease, visible now even to the sons of night. Insurrection usually gains little, usually wastes how much? One of its worst kinds of waste, to say nothing of the rest, is that of irritating and exasperating men against each other, by violence done, which is always sure to be injustice done, for violence does even justice unjustly. Who shall compute the waste and loss, the obstruction of every sort, that was produced in the Manchester region by Peterloo alone? Some 13 unarmed men and women cut down. The number of the slain and maimed is very countable. But the treasury of rage, burning hidden or visible in all hearts ever since, more or less perverting the effort and aim of all hearts ever since, is of unknown extent. How ye came among us, in your cruel armed blindness, ye unspeakable county yeomanry, sabres flourishing, hoofs prancing, and slashed us down at your brute pleasure, deaf, blind to all our claims and woes and wrongs, of quick sight and sense to your own claims only. There lie poor sallow work-worn weavers, and complain no more now. Women themselves are slashed and sabred, howling terror fills the air, and ye ride prosperous, very victorious. Ye unspeakable, give us sabres too, and then come on a little. Such are Peterloos. In all hearts that witnessed Peterloo stands written, as in fire characters, or smoke characters prompt to become fire again, a legible balance account of grim vengeance, very unjustly balanced, much exaggerated, as is the way with such accounts, but payable readily at sight, in full with compound interest. Such things should be avoided as the very pestilence. For men's hearts ought not to be set against one another, but set with one another, and all against the evil thing only. Men's souls ought to be left to see clearly, not jaundiced, blinded, twisted all awry, by revenge, mutual abhorrence, and the like. An insurrection that can announce the disease, and then retire with no such balance accounts opened anywhere, has attained the highest success possible for it. And this was what these poor Manchester operatives, with all the darkness that was in them and round them, did manage to perform. They put their huge inarticulate question, "What do you mean to do with us?" in a manner audible to every reflective soul in this kingdom, exciting deep pity in all good men, deep anxiety in all men whatever, and no conflagration or outburst or madness came to cloud that feeling anywhere, but everywhere it operates unclouded. All England heard the question. It is the first practical form of our Sphinx riddle. England will answer it, or, on the whole, England will perish. One does not yet expect the latter result. For the rest, that the Manchester insurrection could yet discern no radiance of heaven on any side of its horizon, but feared that all lights, of the O'Connor or other sorts, hitherto kindled, were but deceptive fish-oil transparencies, or bog will-o'-wisps light, and no dayspring from on high. For this also we will honour the poor Manchester insurrection, and augur well of it. A deep unspoken sense lies in these strong men, inconsiderable, almost stupid, as all they can articulate of it is. Amid all violent stupidity of speech, A right noble instinct of what is doable and what is not doable never forsakes them. The strong, inarticulate men and workers, whom fact patronizes, of whom, in all difficulty and work whatsoever, there is good augury. This work too is to be done. Governors and governing classes that can articulate and utter, in any measure, what the law of fact and justice is, may calculate that here is a governed class who will listen. And truly, this first practical form of the Sphinx question, inarticulately and so audibly put there, is one of the most impressive ever asked in the world. Behold us here, so many thousands, millions, and increasing at the rate of 50 every hour. We are right willing and able to work, and on the planet Earth is plenty of work, and wages for 1,000,000 times as many. We ask, if you mean to lead us towards work, to try to lead us, by ways new, never yet heard of till the new unheard of time, or if you declare that you cannot lead us, and expect that we are to remain quietly unled, and in a composed manner perish of starvation. What is it you expect of us? What is it you mean to do with us? This question, I say, has been put in the hearing of all Britain, and will be again put, and ever again, till some answer be given it. Unhappy workers, unhappy idlers, unhappy men and women of this actual England, we are yet very far from an answer, and there will be no existence for us without finding one. A fair day's wages for a fair day's work. It is as just a demand as governed men ever made of governing. It is the everlasting right of man, indisputable as gospels, as arithmetical multiplication tables. It must and will have itself fulfilled. And yet, in these times of ours, with what enormous difficulty, next door to impossibility. For the times are really strange, of a complexity intricate with all the new width of the ever-widening world. Times here of half-frantic velocity of impetus, there of the deadest-looking stillness and paralysis. Times definable as showing no qualities, dilettantism and mammonism, most intricate obstructed times. Nay, if there were not a heaven's radiance of justice, prophetic, clearly of heaven, discernible behind all these confused worldwide entanglements of landlord interests, manufacturing interests, Tory Whig interests, and who knows what other interests, expediencies, vested interests, established possessions, invertebrate dialecticisms, Midas-eared mammonisms, it would seem to everyone a flat impossibility which all wise men might as well at once abandon. If you do not know eternal justice from momentary expediency, and understand in your heart of hearts how justice, radiant, beneficent as the all-victorious light element, is also in essence, if need be, an all-victorious fire element, and melts all manner of vested interests, and the hardest iron cannon, as if they were soft wax, and does ever in the long run rule and reign, and allows nothing else to rule and reign, you also would talk of impossibility. But it is only difficult. It is not impossible. Possible? It is, with whatever difficulty, very clearly inevitable. Fair day's wages for fair day's work, exclaims a sarcastic man. Alas, In what corner of this planet, since Adam first awoke on it, was that ever realised? The day's wages of John Milton's day's work, named Paradise Lost and Milton's Works, were £10 paid by instalments, and a rather close escape from death on the gallows. Consider that. It is no rhetorical flourish. It is an authentic, altogether quiet fact. Emblematic, quietly documentary of a whole world of such, ever since human history began. Oliver Cromwell quitted his farming, undertook a Hercules labour and lifelong wrestle with that Lernean hydrocoil, wide as England, hissing heaven high, though its 1,000-crowned, coroneted, shovel-hatted quackheads. And he did wrestle with it, the truest and terriblest wrestle I have heard of. And he wrestled it, and mowed and cut it down a good many stages, so that its hissing is ever since pitiful in comparison, and one can walk abroad in comparative peace from it. And his wages, as I understand, were burial under the gallows tree near Tyburn Turnpike, with his head on the gable of Westminster Hall, and 2 centuries now of mixed cursing and ridicule from all manner of men. His dust lies under Edgware Road, near Tyburn Turnpike, at this hour, and his memory is... Nay, what matters his memory is? His memory, at bottom, is or yet shall be as that of a god. A terror and a horror to all quacks and cowards and insincere persons. An everlasting encouragement, new memento, battle word, and pledge of victory to all the brave. It is the natural course and history of the godlike, in every place, in every time. What god ever carried it with the £10 franchises? In open vestry, or with a sanhedrim of considerable standing? When was a god found agreeable to everybody? The regular way is to hang, kill, crucify your gods, and execrate them and trample them under your stupid hooves for a century or 2, till you discover that they are gods, and then take to braying over them, still in a very long-eared manner. So speaks the sarcastic man, in his wild way, very mournful truths. Day's wages for day's work, continues he. The progress of human society consists even in this same. The better and better apportioning of wages to work. Give me this, you have given me all. Pay to every man accurately what he has worked for, what he has earned and done and deserved. To this man broad lands and honours, to that mine high gibbets and treadmills. What more have I to ask? Heaven's kingdom, which we daily pray for, has come. God's will is done on earth even as it is in heaven. This is radiance of celestial justice, in the light or in the fire of which all impediments, vested interests, and iron cannon are more and more melting like wax and disappearing from pathways of men. A thing ever struggling forward, irrepressible, advancing inevitable, perfecting itself all days more and more. Never to be perfect till that general doomsday, the ultimate consummation and last of earthly days. True. As to perfection and so forth, answer we, true enough. And yet withal we have to remark that imperfect human society holds itself together, and finds place under the sun, in virtue simply of some approximation to perfection being actually made and put in practice. We remark farther, that there are supportable approximations, and then likewise insupportable. With some, almost with any, supportable approximation men are apt, perhaps too apt, to rest indolently patient and say, "It will do." Thus these poor Manchester manual workers mean only, by day's wages for day's work, certain coins of money adequate to keep them living. In return for their work, such modicum of food, clothes, and fuel as will enable them to continue their work itself. They as yet clamour for no more. The rest, still inarticulate, cannot yet shape itself into a demand at all, and only lies in them as a dumb wish. Perhaps only, still more inarticulate, as dumb, altogether unconscious want. This is the supportable approximation they would rest patient with, that by their work they might be kept alive to work more. This once grown unattainable, I think, your approximation consider itself to have reached the insupportable stage, and may prepare, with whatever difficulty, reluctance, and astonishment, for one of two things, for changing or perishing. With the millions no longer able to live, how can the units keep living? It is too clear the nation itself is on the way to suicidal death. Shall we say then, the world has retrograded in its talent of apportioning wages to work, in late days? The world had always a talent of that sort, better or worse. Time was when the mere hand-worker needed not announce his claim to the world by Manchester insurrections. The world, with its wealth of nations, supply and demand and such like, has of late days been terribly inattentive to that question of work and wages. We will not say, the poor world has retrograded even here. We will say rather, the world has been rushing on with such fiery animation to get work and ever more work done, it has had no time to think of dividing the wages, and has merely left them to be scrambled for by the law of the stronger, the law of supply and demand, law of laissez-faire, and other idle laws and unlaws, saying, in its dire haste to get the work done, that is well enough. And now the world will have to pause a little, and take up that other side of the problem, and in right earnest strive for some solution of that. For it has become pressing. What is the use of your spun shirts? They hang there by the million unsaleable, and here, by the million, are diligent bare backs that can get no hold of them. Shirts are useful for covering human backs, useless otherwise, as unbearable mockery otherwise. You have fallen terribly behind with that side of the problem. Manchester insurrections, French revolutions, and thousandfold phenomena great and small, announce loudly that you must bring it forward a little again. Never till now, in the history of an earth which to this hour nowhere refuses to grow corn if you will plough it, to yield shirts if you will spin and weave it, did the mere manual two-handed worker, however it might fare with other workers, cry in vain for such wages as he means by fair wages, namely food and warmth. The godlike could not and cannot be paid, but the earthly always could. Girth, a mere swineherd, born thrall of Cedric the Saxon, tended pigs in the woods, and did get some parings of the pork. Why, the four-footed worker has already got all that this two-handed one is clamouring for. How often must I remind you? There is not a horse in England, able and willing to work, but has due food and lodging, and goes about sleek-coated, satisfied in heart. And you say, it is impossible. Brothers, I answer, if for you it be impossible, what is to become of you? It is impossible for us to believe it to be impossible. The human brain, looking at these sleek English horses, refuses to believe in such impossibility for English men. Do you depart quickly? Clear the ways soon, lest worse befall. We for our share do purpose, with full view of the enormous difficulty, with total disbelief in the impossibility, to endeavour while life is in us, and to die endeavouring, we and our sons, till we attain it or have all died and ended. Such a platitude of a world, in which all working horses could be well fed, and innumerable working men should die starved, were it not best to end it, to have done with it, and restore it once for all to the Jotuns, mud giants, frost giants, and chaotic brute gods of the beginning? For the old archaic brute gods it may be well enough, but it is a platitude which men should be above countenancing by their presence in it. We pray you, let the word impossible disappear from your vocabulary in this matter. It is of awful omen to all of us, and to yourselves first of all.